In this chapter, we're looking at fairness. The idea that there is inequality out there, and you don't need me to tell you that. I should hope it would be apparent to all of us that, especially in a place like Hawaii, those who are rich are very, very rich, and those who are poor are quite, quite poor. Um, and those differences seem to persist over time. And there's inequality both as measured by income as well as measured by wealth. So, um, the usually what happens and when we talk about inequality, we're usually measuring it in terms of quintiles or other kinds of percentages. Where if society was equal, if there was equality, then the top 1% of the population would have 1% of the income, and so on and so forth. And it's not. And this is the data that's from 2016, so it has only gotten worse. In fact, the pandemic exacerbated this even further. Um, yeah, the top 1% of individuals in the United States have 20% of the income. Um, and as you expand that out even further, the top 25% have almost 70% of the income, which would then mean that the bottom 75% are all fighting for scraps, the 30% that's remaining. Um, and as you can see with the last bullet point, that number has grown significantly, from 7.55% in 1978 to 20%. Now, and I'm not gonna, but you can see it was fueled by the tax policies and just the way that income was earned in the 1980s, and certainly part of driving this as well is that you know certain kinds of investments like real estate, like stocks, generate income as well, and that these individuals in the top 1% own a lot of that kind of stuff. So you see that the income becomes cyclical with like the stock market and even things like the housing market. And you can see here that if we look at the 1%, 5%, 10%, and 25 percentiles, um, we can just see that the rich keep getting richer. There's not a lot of nice ways to put it. Um, Now, it may be that we don't exactly know um, how rich the poor people are because we do have a lot of data actually about rich people. They do file their taxes. Um, so we do know um, a good deal about them. Also, we know that those who are poor, not only do they not have a lot of income, but we know that their filing of taxes is going to be lower, but also their sources of income may not be captured in the tax system, right? It might be cash payments for certain kinds of things. Okay. Um, this kind of, I mean, yeah, it's useful, but let's just focus more on um, inequality itself. So, the same trends we see for income carry over to wealth, but are exasperated even more because wealth, right, is the buildup of that inequality over time. The top 1% of families have almost 40% of the wealth. 40% of the wealth, which would mean that 99% of the people then are fighting over that remaining 60%. And to highlight how unequal things are, when there's a normal distribution, the mean and the median should be close to one another, and they're not. That the median, meaning you take all the households, the one that's right in the middle, that would be at $88,000 in wealth. But if you do the mean, you can see that in terms of the mean, you've got a lot of income for very few families and very little income for a lot of families. So you have very long tails in that distribution, where the mean wealth then is $629,000. I don't have $629,000. Um, and so you can see this kind of right here where the um, the top 10% of the families, um, which is our dark blue line, that represents about 38.5%. Um, and so yeah, it's the rich do keep getting richer, where that richness is defined by wealth, and the poor, as we see here, continually are getting poorer. And even those who I don't want to call them middle class, but those who may have been comfortable, let's say, being in the 50th to 90th percentile in terms of wealth, so in the top half, even their share is declining. So there is this disappearance, I guess you could say, of a middle class in terms of wealth. And you would see that with the beige line declining. That it really is becoming a society where people are either rich or poor. Um, and you see that the difference, again, between the mean wealth and the median wealth, that difference is just growing. So the divide is growing. And I just said this, your middle class is um, disappearing. Um, but what else do I want to? I mean, there's a lot of slides here. I don't want to make this just a description of. What do I want to say about this? I'm sorry if I sound a little bit disjoint about this, but this is a pretty complicated topic. Um, it is all about mobility, right? If we talk about what are the virtues of the United States, what is great about the United States, why do people that live in countries or in societies of turmoil, war, why is the United States typically that destination, despite all the problems that we have as a society? It is this idea of mobility, that a family can come to the United States, not know the language, and through hard work and determination, um, build up a lifestyle. Um, that is absolutely true. But increasingly, the ability of a family to move up dramatically is compromised. And so, to the extent that income mobility has decreased in the United States, the inequality has become greater. Now, what can you do? Um, what can we do as a society to fix this problem? Well, part of it could be by adjusting things in the tax code, right? So we could say to individuals, you can't pass on your wealth um, to your children without being taxed. Um, what we could try to do as well is so we could try to do things where we like kind of like fix the inheritance tax. The other kind of way we could fix this inequality is by really kind of expanding opportunities for things like higher education, access to certain kinds of jobs. All of those things would um, give certain families more income and ability to capture more wealth. Wealth for a typical household, most wealth is concentrated in housing for the most part. I mean, I certainly know it's my biggest financial thing out there. I can't really say asset because I don't own my house. My bank owns my house. But the idea, right, or at least the agreement or the expectation that I have is that I'll own my house for that I'll pay my mortgage for 30 years, and over time um, that house will also grow in value, so much so um, that will become my largest asset. And so that's where my portfolio is growing, right? Yeah, I own stocks and things like that too. But even this past year, if we're talking about 2021, the housing market did fantastic. And so again, I don't own my house. The bank owns my house. But if you looked at it in terms of like house value, dude, the Shining household didn't do too bad last year. Now, that's the Shining household. All placed on that trajectory of greater wealth based on my ability to purchase a house in 2020. Now, my ability to purchase a house in 2020 was just dumb luck, I guess. Um, had I not been able to do that, I would have not experienced that same growth in wealth. And that's part of the consequence of lack of home ownership. What is the consequence of lack of home ownership is reduced wealth accumulation and contributions to greater inequality um, in terms of that wealth. Okay. I guess sorry. One last thing. Um, the other part to this would be student loans, something that probably all of you have to some degree. Um, those student loans obviously reduce your ability to, let's say, acquire a house, or you find that your income and whatnot. Yes, you're earning more income, but that income isn't being used to accumulate wealth. Rather, it's being used to pay off debts. Um, yeah, that's obviously a problem. And in the United States, it doesn't seem like we're making any progress on student debt relief or anything like that. If we are able to do that, that would obviously contribute greatly as well to reducing inequality in wealth and in income.